What a difference a few days make. I actually filmed this interview with Andre on Tuesday. Everything seemed fine. And then ZachXBTs tweet dropped, and it was a bombshell for Wonderland, for Dani Sestagalli, for the Frog Nation, and for Andre. Not exactly guilty by association, but certainly tainted. ZachXBTs, Wonderland's treasury manager, was doxxed as Michael Patryn, co-founder of QuadrigaCX, the Canadian exchange that went bust after CEO Gerald Cotten died in mysterious circumstances in India, and it was only revealed after his death that he was the only one with the keys to the cold wallets that held users' funds, and they never got it back. It remains one of the strangest stories I have ever seen in crypto. There was no obfuscation from Dani, and he seems to have decided that the best course of action was brutal honesty. I want everyone to know that I was aware of this and decided that the past of an individual doesn't determine their future. Some definite ethical considerations here. Does somebody's past dictate their future? Should we cut them off before they've had a chance to redeem themselves? Big questions. Wonderland's time token has taken a predictable battering, and ZachXBTs has announced he will be stepping down, and there has been a vote to remove him completely opened up. That vote is now overwhelmingly in favor of him being replaced as I record this. But this film isn't about all of that. It's about Andre. Blameless, of course, but again, finding himself caught up in this mess thanks to his working with Dani on Solidly. Within the last hour, Andre released a short blog post entitled Not So Smart Contracts, highlighting his deeply felt paradox of blockchain, that it should work without human intervention, but yet highlighting the way it brings humans together as comrades. And all of this feels particularly poignant because in our discussion, we touched on an AI future, a machine-to-machine world, and our weird place within it. Building in DeFi sucks. Yeah, we touched on that too. And here we are. This is one of the most refreshingly honest and BS-free discussions I've had in a very long time. Andre isn't everyone's cup of tea, sure. But despite building code that needs no humans, he remains one of the most human developers around. The perfect embodiment of that paradox that drove him to write the article. And as he says, I will continue working towards our machine overlord future. Maybe they'll keep me as a pet. We covered so many topics from Fantom to Solidly to solving mortality, abundance, and receiving death threats. But we began at the beginning, when a much more innocent Andre was reviewing layer 1 code bases and finding himself getting rather annoyed.
You're living in an industry where so much is decided by code and the quality of code. And does it match with what these people are promising? And is it aligned with the grander scheme and the vision and stuff? And I actually got caught up a little bit in that. And then somehow the reviews became an indicator for people. And I started getting involved with crypto briefing. And I still love the crypto briefing guys, Han, Jay, the whole team, phenomenal people. And you know, it got a little bit bastardized at a point because it stopped being about the code and it started being about my opinion, which I didn't really enjoy. And towards the latter end, towards when I finally just decided I'm not going to write reviews anymore, you know, the only reason people were reading it was because they wanted to know should they invest or not. So like the original audience that I was even accidentally writing for, which was supposed to be a technically aligned mindset of reader, you know, ended up being random ICO investors that just wanted to know if they should, you know, flip a ETH into it or not. And that put a lot of drain on me because, you know, at the same time, now add that asterisk of, you know, I started doing that to learn. I did not have the answers. There was a bunch of technologies I didn't understand at the time. There's a bunch of technologies I still don't understand. No one has a complete vision or oversight of what's going on or what's right. And, you know, it's also an evolving technology. So reading back on a lot of those reviews, you know, a lot of them missed the mark. I still got higher than a 50% accuracy rate. And my general rule is the same as proof of work, 51%. If I'm 51% of the time right, I'm good with that. If I keep 51% of people happy, I'm happy with that. And that's my general stats. But yeah, you know, it started out purely as an educational exercise for myself and then as an attempt to hopefully educate others, and then just got bastardized by this industry and, you know, the one thing people care about more than anything else, which is how do they make money?
Well, it's funny thinking back on that because we also have to put it into context. We came out of this period of excessive exuberance and buying utter garbage. And there were so many shitcoins ICOing. And then there was this moment where we started to see supposedly superior layer one technology coming out. And there were so many of these as well. That I mean, there are like over 100 of these things that came out from all over the world purporting to be the answer to the trilemma, the scaling solution we've all been waiting for. But I think what nobody really knew was whether any of it was real or not. And you were the only person, I seem to remember, who was willing to put their hand up and say, I'll take a look, and actually go there and take a look. And it was really credible. And you say now that it wasn't that credible, but you were the only person doing that. You were an outlier at that time.
Yeah, I don't know why. You know, like, it's true for almost everything I've built in this industry. I always look at what I built, and then when I look at it, the first thing that comes to my mind is, this is so simplistic. Why has no one else done it yet? You know, and the same with the code reviews. Like any coder with a little bit of a technical writing skill could have done those probably much better than I did. But just no one did. Jumping a little bit forward, you know, Yearn, just automating between deposits, like so simple, but again, just no one did. And something like Keeper, you know, that's just automating off-chain jobs, similar as what arbitrage bots do. Again, simplistic concept, but no one did. So I don't know. I don't know if it's yeah, I think that's a full stop statement. I just don't know.
Well, I think I do know. And I think there's two things here, which is you are overly humble and self-deprecating to a full, I think, possibly. I think you should recognize your own kind of ability to see through the clutter. But I also think there's a contrarian side to you, which is, I think this is bullshit. And then you're willing to back your hunch by going and proving that it is or it isn't. And if it isn't, then okay, you put your hand up. And I think part of that is also the fact that you're not anonymous. And so you know your reputation rides on your own face and your own image and your own brand. But I think that's delightfully refreshing. I also think there's the degree to which this industry is so complex. Everybody's just looking for a copy. They just want to go, well, that worked. Let's just copy it. And I don't think you do that. I think you go, this doesn't work. What can we do differently? Am I on the money here?
Look, I definitely like calling out bullshit. That's something that I'm always happy to put my hand up to. I've definitely become a lot more cautious, shall we say? No, not cautious. Cautious isn't the right word.
Diplomatic, maybe.
No, it's not even diplomatic. I am just tired of needing to wade through, you know, like back with my code reviews. If I wrote a bad review of a project, then at best one person would message me and say, oh, I'm some kind of paid shill and that's why I wrote a bad review. But like, you know, nowadays, if I say anything about any of these projects that's not some glorious statement of reverence, then it's hundreds, sometimes thousands of people going out of their way to just try and bombard you with how incompetent you are or how shit you are. And like yeah, most of it is low energy and you can skip it. But like the problem is, and again, this is my own fault, is I made myself a little bit too public in both Twitter and Telegram and, you know, all of the places where I allow people to contact me. But part of that is because I want to be easily reachable. And part of that is because you never know what opportunity is going to come from that. And later in my career, you never know who's going to divulge a potential live exploit to you, which is also incredibly important to be aware of. So, you know, it's not like I can just skip all of the stuff, because the same account that messages me for the first time on Telegram to tell me what an utter piece of human excrement I am is also potentially the same account that tells me of a live exploit in an environment that I need to be able to attend to. So, because, you know, the reason I add this qualification is it's always easy for people to say, just ignore it, just block it, just whatever. But in today's day and age, it's so easy to start up a new account, to create a fresh one. So, you know, one person with a little bit of motivation, they can make 10, 20 accounts in a day and just bombard you with, you know, whatever vile imagination they want. And like some of these guys get very descriptive, and a few of them have hit my soft spots. That's for sure, and like that always gets me a little bit. But like it's cost benefit analysis of the size, because at this point, let's say a small new project pops up and they're lying to their people and they're an obvious scam. Like me drawing attention to the fact they're a scam ends up drawing more attention to them. And then there's potentially people that accidentally fall into it because all it needs is, one cropped tweet with a few select words that makes it look like I actually was endorsing it instead of saying it's garbage. So I can't do that anymore. And if you look at the big projects that I can call out, each project has leagues of minions who are, it's sports enthusiasts with monetary incentive. Like it's the two worst things you could combine to create this like cauldron boiling pot of a community that's just ready to lash out at any given point in time. So there's just very little practical reason nowadays to call anyone out. The last time that I can really think that I was doing that is probably with my when I was like trying to point out the Polygon Layer 2 meme. With that being said, they've done well for themselves now. They've bought enough L2s that they are legit in L2. Just their sidechain is still a sidechain, but that's a different story. But if I say anything, just me saying this on this segment, I know is going to have backlash, and I'm going to be prepared for that, and that's fine. It's part of the game. But I talk to a lot of people who even anonymous guys who they start an account, it's fun, that account grows to too many followers, too many viewership, too many whatever, and then they get to a point where they're just like, it's not worth it anymore, it's not fun anymore, and they just bail on that and start up a new one because that's more fun. And I kind of get that because I do the same. But with projects, I start up a project. That's the fun part for me. That's where I'm excited. I like the innovation. And then if it works, which is awesome, but I'm no longer useful then. So then it's time for me to move on. So it's a very similar concept. I think when it comes to the social side, like the only reason I haven't really pushed the reset button there is just because it's so much effort trying to like get any kind of reach, and like I still enjoy the fact that now when I want to test a new product, I can test it with an active viewership versus if I start from zero again, then it's just me testing. And it's a very different, like you get the same results, but now I can achieve the result in a week that would normally have taken me, 6 months. So it's a nice difference.
But I also think you have an educated minority in the Yearn ecosystem where you've got trusted lieutenants and trusted people. I mean, I say lieutenants, they're not really lieutenants, it's just, co-conspirators, shall we say, who can help distribute the message as well. But I mean, that does bring us, there's two things. You said that, hitting soft spots. You wrote an unfavorable code review of Harmony. And when I look back at it, it actually really wasn't that unfavorable. It was fairly honest. Man, it hurt. It hurt so bad at the time. I remember discussing it internally. And we were just like, the fuck is wrong with this guy? Why does he hate us? And you're like, but then, you didn't hate us. You just offered an opinion, but it really hurt, man. It really hurt.
My biggest thing with that Harmony review, I still remember my warning. And I mean, I chatted to Steven and all these guys, they're outliers. They're good guys. They're good tech. They know what they're doing. They know what they're building. They had a good vision. The problem was they didn't have enough tech at that point in time. So now I had burnout. That's literally what it is. I've now looked, at a 100+ of projects promising the exact same thing, all sort of at the exact same space. And that's why, as I wrote in the review, like what's there is fine. What I saw is good, but do we need another one? Because that was more a comment of the industry at the time than it was a comment on the specific product, because my big takeaway there was, do we really need another one of these? If there are 100 that are kind of at the same space. On the flip side, obviously very good for them. They were just a little bit late in the space, but I'm glad they kept grinding because it's good, it's solid.
Well, yeah, I mean, I spent 18 months there and I learned so much, and it was stuff that was humbling, honestly, and it taught me what developers go through, what it's like when stuff goes wrong, and just how awful it really is, and how hard it is to fix stuff, and also just how much I don't think people realize how many attacks are going on all the time. How shit is consistently under fire from God knows where. I don't know if you've had this experience of Fantom, but we suffered an attack. It was a shard takedown. We found out who it was because they didn't cover their tracks very well. It turns out it was like a very similar competitor product, and it was their CTO who just basically decided to teach us a lesson. And we're like, well, what are you supposed to do there? It's just like, I'm gonna just take you down because I can. It was crazy.
The one quote I see so much in crypto, and I think it's really the ethos of crypto, even though I hate it, is that quote of, it's not enough that I succeed, others must fail. So that's always how I consider, most projects, because even on my Twitter, I like to complement the projects I consider have good tech. So like I frequently speak well of projects like Avalanche or Near or, Harmony as well, like things I consider have real tech nowadays. But a lot of the other projects, and not necessarily the projects, but their spokespeople, because they always like to differentiate themselves, because now just sure you work for it, but you're not the official voice, and now you're allowed to talk shit about other projects the whole time. But anyway, that's a whole different segment. But they're so quickly to start attacking as soon as a different project has a little bit of a metric that's now slightly better, then they'll try attacking any other side. Because like you say, it's attacks. But what people don't realize, it's not just technological attacks. It's social attacks. It's staff being poached attacks. It's obviously brigading. It's social channels. There's like, you're always on the defensive, and I don't think anyone that hasn't been on the builder side really understands how bad it actually is. That's why I keep, when anyone asks me how do they get into the space, I always tell them don't. Like, you have to hate yourself to get into the space. Like, there has to be some part of you that I mean, you commented I'm self-deprecating. I am, but that's the only thing that still keeps me here. Like if I wasn't, I'm pretty sure I would have left by now, because I mean, and that's why almost yearly, like clockwork, I wrote those building in DeFi sucks blogs, because it does. That's not an over dramatization or anything. That's literally, hey, try and be a builder for a few months and see how it goes for you, because you will be emotionally, mentally, physically choose a metric and it will drain you. Like even on those metrics, my relationships have deteriorated. My family relationships have deteriorated. My mental health has definitely deteriorated. My physical capability has deteriorated. You have to be...
Your socials are great. Socials are healthy, so who cares?
Oh yeah.
Body be damned. Let's get fat but famous.
Because I'm defined by my Twitter followers, right? No, those aren't metrics I care about. If you want a healthy life, you need to make sure body, mind, and friends are your top 3 priorities. And I can very easily say those have not been my top priorities since I got into this industry.
So then what's keeping you going? Because you're either a masochist, or you're a lunatic, or you're just wired differently. Which is it?
All of the above, my man. All of the above. I mean, everyone knows as well that, I'm no stranger to rage quitting this industry. Like, every so often I just reach my threshold and then I'm just done. I just tell people, okay, bye.
But that's like the weakest move you can pull. Rage quitting only hurts the person that quits. It doesn't do anything for you. And then you come back and go, oh, I'm okay now. I'm sorry, I didn't mean it.
I disagree with that. Like the times I've rage quit, it did great for my mental state. Like, I was in places where the first one, I mean, there's been 2 incidents. The first one was with the very first iron pool I deployed, which had that slippage attack on the new curve pools that people weren't supposed to even use, which is apparently a common denominator for me, because fast forward a few years and same thing with Eminence. And I was attacked so much by my peers in the space, the other builders, the other creators at the time, that the people I looked up to and cared about were saying the most vicious things about me. So I was like, okay, well then I'm not going to take part of this. Why the hell am I wasting my time? Bye. And the second time was after Eminence, and I was receiving so many death threats and like personal attacks, and a thing that I've mentioned once or twice, but it's not too publicly known. As you know, I've had a physical letter arrive at my house with death threats, and I mean that stuff. No, that's opt out.
Yeah, 100%. I had that at Harmony as well. Like someone send me a picture of a knife saying, "This is real. This is what's coming to cut you." You're like, what the fuck did I do? Honestly.
Yeah. So no, I don't regret that I left on either of those occasions. I often regret that I came back. More so than that I didn't stay away, but I can't stay away.
Dude, but what is this? What is this driving force? That are you just like fueled by this interminable curiosity to try and push this DeFi thing as far as you can, and then die in the process?
Like it's a little bit intangible, but there's something here. Like if I knew what it was, I would have built it. I don't know what it was. Like I'm starting to try and build it, and I'm starting to try and do the pieces. But for all of the things I hate in this industry, and that's a lot. I mean, I hate the greed. I hate the money obsession. I hate when I did this talk with Dani the other day on Messi's Frog Radio, and it was such a nice talk. We had so many technical questions, and it was engaging while I was talking to the host and things. And then the second it was open to the audience, it was, oh, when airdrop? Oh, how do I qualify for the airdrop? Oh, how do I get the free stuff? Like, come on, people. We can be better than this. We can elevate ourselves higher than this. There's a lot of this industry I hate, dude. Like I can't actually overemphasize that. But underneath that all, there's a chance. It's a small chance. It's a slim bloody chance, and it gets smaller every day. But there is the chance that we can actually build something better here, that we can actually make something new here. Now, the problem is the way we're currently going, we're just going to replicate the traditional financial industry, and it's going to end up being exactly the bloody same. The only difference is traditional finance is dudes in suits, and DeFi is going to be dudes in hoodies. But other than that, there's going to be no bloody difference. And that to me is the saddest thing. And I'm trying. Maybe I should try harder. I think I'm trying the best I can. But we need to have a more open ethos of it's not just about me, but it's about us. It's the same thing I try to embody with a lot of what I do, and a lot of why I try and give everything away, because greed begets greed. Like the more you want, the more you're going to start taking, and it's never enough. I've spoken to guys who have a few 100K. I've spoken to guys who have billions, and like, it doesn't matter. It's not enough. They want more. They need bigger numbers. I'm like, what the hell are you even doing with your money? Like, I don't understand. But, it becomes a leaderboard of life that everyone is trying to compete on.
I suspect it's because the pain of doing something where you have to invest a piece of your soul into it is too painful for them to do it. So they default back to this game of numbers and so-called tangible things, which are just social markers, really. And I think that's what makes you interesting is you refuse to do that, and you kind of self-sabotage in a way. Like fair launch. People give you shit for fair launch. I'm like, what the fuck? How? There's literally, if there's one thing you could say, because I completely understand this. If you give something away for free, nobody can give you any shit. And yet they do. And I don't understand it.
Yep, you still get the shit, but none of the upside. Yeah, dude, I'm looking at it now with this solidly airdrop that I'm trying to do with the multiple projects, and like even now, I'm just frequently told what a stupid idea it is, and how like, no, but this project should have gotten an advantage. Oh, but now this one isn't on Fantom. How are they supposed to get the airdrop? I'm like, guys, just a little bit of room to breathe here. Just it doesn't have to be a lot, but I need a little bit. It's like, there's a saying, no good deed goes unpunished. That is such a beautiful quote, because no good deed goes unpunished. Doesn't matter what you try and do, it's going to come back to you in a bad way, some way. But I also believe that is true on the short scale, on the short term, when you start, spreading it out over a broader view and you start getting a little bit more philosophical into sort of karmic cycles and stuff, then I do think good deeds eventually are rewarded. I just think, whoever designed our world, whoever the grand coder to all of this was, they decided that if you want anything nice, you always have to have delayed gratification, self-sacrifice, and be willing to do a good deed, even if it's punished.
So I'm gonna push back on you a little bit there, because I have 2 young kids, and they're obsessed with Minecraft. They're obsessed with building. They're obsessed with designing, thinking up ideas, and they don't give a shit about the money. They just want to create, and they want to build. And what I've noticed is that the teenagers that I have encountered through them just love to share information. There's no politics around it. There is a chance that the generation that follows the generation that I don't know what they call Gen Alpha or something, but that the one that follows that will be wired very, very differently. I'm sort of vaguely hopeful that this phase we're in now is somewhat temporary, and it's somewhat been amplified by a financial crisis and a bunch of other things, and that there will be born into this world and continue to grow a generation that really doesn't think that way. And is a lot more about the herd than the individual. But maybe I'm being completely idealistic here.
Well, so that comes down to abundance theory, the mindset that there's always more. The beauty of being a child or a teenager is you can have abundance theory, because there's always going to be food, there's always going to be spending money, there's always going to be a new game, because you don't yet realize that these are constrained resources. When you get old enough to realize everyone's competing for the same pool, then abundance theory very quickly goes away, and all of a sudden it becomes, a singular mindset. So children and young teens, anyone that doesn't have to, work for their own food, is in a position where they have the luxury of being able to have abundance theory. And that goes back to my original point where I said the possibility exists in what we're building today that we can give future generations abundance theory. But to do that, we have to give them access to a somehow fair and equitable wealth system, which is actually possible with blockchain. It's not what we're doing right now. Like, what we're doing right now is making the rich richer. We're perpetuating the exact same cycle. But the possibility exists to codify those rules simplistically because it cannot be governed by greed, which is important. And if we can accomplish that, it creates the environment for these future generations to keep that childlike abundance theory, So even when they're 40, they don't have to worry about where's their meal going to come from. They don't have to worry about, can they afford the mortgage to feed their kids? They can still just enjoy their environment, enjoy their peers, and share. Because there's been quite a few experiments, with universal income and stuff. And it shows in those environments, people care more about their neighbors. They care more about the rest of their society. They actually try and help more. But in opposite environments...
But yeah, they didn't all succeed though. Do you remember which particular one you were talking about? Because there's one in Finland that they ran, and it was extremely successful. But they've done less successful ones around the world. But I mean, universal basic income. Did you see WorldCoin? Did you see that crazy eye scanning?
That was the eye scan one, right? Yeah. Scan your eyeball, get free money. I mean, yeah, I guess that's
Listen, I know how to solve this.
Give me
mortality. If people don't die, then none of this matters anymore, because you're simply unbounded. So you can take longer to learn things. I mean, obviously we're going to have food and population control issues, but that's why we're going to Mars, because if it takes, we could also put someone into sleep and send them off to but you, Andre Cronje, solve mortality, and you are written into legend, and you're done. People won't have to worry about this stuff anymore, because we're so bound in this idea of the scarcity of life. Therefore, we must pack in as much as possible into the shortest amount of time as possible. Fuck the other guy, and the environment be damned. All that stuff. It's because we die. You take that away, we're golden.
I don't necessarily agree that there's causality there. So that assumes we're greedy because we live short. I'm saying we're greedy irrespective because we're afraid that there might not be resources for tomorrow. And if I know I'm going to live an infinite amount of time, or let's stretch it, right? Let's say 500 years, then that's even more of a concern. Right now, I need to collect money so that I can survive till I'm 90. Now you're telling me I need to collect enough money to survive till I'm 500. All of a sudden, that changes the picture of how greedy and selfish I need to be. And now, of course, if you say fix mortality, that doesn't necessarily mean you fix ageism or any stuff like that. You can still be a 500-year super old, nearly dust person. And that comes with a bunch of different problems that now you have to solve with medical healthcare and these things. So like I used to be a big fan of like Rice or any of Braham or any of these old vampire novels and things. And one thing that was prevalent there is that and obviously it's a side effect of human condition. Humans write it so they can't have the mind of an immortal. But like clockwork, these immortals still just accumulate more and more and more and more and more. And it's kind of true if you look at the traditional world as well, right? Like even look at stocks. Right? They kind of always just go up. Like if you bought stocks 30 years ago, it's up now. If you bought it 10 years ago, it's up now. And it doesn't really matter. If you bought a house 50 years ago, it's worth more now. If some old stuff, with the exception of like Beanie Babies, everything went up in value. So be around long enough, you're just going to make more money than the other guy. So I again, personally, I don't think the problem is with longevity necessarily. I think the problem is with the concept of what do I need. And, that comes down to, like I said, when you now tell me I have to live till 500, I'm going to start thinking, how much money do I need to survive till then? If you tell me I'm going to live till next week, all of a sudden I'm going to spend all of my money. Because why hoard it if I only have 7 days left?
Well, I think there's a clear and impending divergence of us fleshy human meat sacks with AI. I mean, you can see it now. It's happening at speed, and I think there's sort of two scenarios here. There's the optimistic one, which is we learn to coexist, and we may even in fact become the same thing, or they destroy us. So there's some really fun things on the horizon in terms of that. And I think those big questions that we need to answer concerning the environment, of course, and concerning wage inequality and just all of these big questions that are confronting us, they'll suddenly come into sharp relief at a moment of singularity. I don't know if you've ever thought about that, but this stuff keeps me up at night. And I like to think about sci-fi futures and that kind of thing.
So conceptually, I love it. Conceptually, I enjoy it. As a coder, I am not particularly worried about AI happening anytime soon, because coders, we're dumb. Like, we're blunt instruments. Anyone that thinks we're creating some kind of new future, nope. We're just trying to figure out why the code that we think we didn't change 5 minutes ago now all of a sudden has errors in, and we're going to try and fix that. Like, I think our mind share is a lot further in terms of having thought about AI than the technology actually is. Because now another thing about AI, you hear about it a lot in the news, you see a lot of these things, but there's a big difference between AI as we have it today and what they call generalized AI. Now, generalized AI, that's something that can think within its parameters. And AI we have today is really just black box algorithms. It's basically saying, hey, here's a set of data, here's the output that I want that I manually selected. Can you kind of figure out a method how, if I give you different output, you're going to get the same answer? And then a black box runs that for a few times, and it does a few iterations, and it creates, some funky math that we can't understand. And I mean, give it to someone that specializes in it, and sure they will, but that's kind of where we are at AI now. So we're very far away from any kind of generalized AI. And even if we get to the point of generalized AI, it's going to have been coded with human limitations in mind, because we can't get rid of those limitations. So, like, from the sci-fi perspective, I love it. Like obviously, I'm on the side of we're definitely being wiped out. I don't see how any intelligent being that makes decisions without emotion can reach a different conclusion. Like if their parameter is to save the earth or prolong the earth or literally anything to do with the planet, then you got to get rid of the virus. And I mean, humans we're a virus on this planet. We mutate the same, we breed the same. Like if you compare us to a virus in a body, we have the exact same markers. So that's kind of the logical choice there. But technologically speaking, we're so far away from that like we'll first need to solve mortality before we're going to get that one, unfortunately.
Well, yes, I know. Well, it's funny though, because the future that I imagined when I was a kid, so much of it, I see it right now, like an iPhone. If I'd shown that to me when I was 6 years old, it would have blown my tiny little brain. And I'm increasingly aware of the tools that I'm using being more and more sophisticated and more capable of things. And it's weird because I spent so long with a camera in my hand, understanding optics and how they're translated, images are translated through glass. Suddenly this year, I'm aware that everything we're doing is about programming. It's about programming through Unreal Engine. It's about programming data sets coming in. It's motion capture. It's all these things. I'm becoming virtual. Everything that I do in the real world is becoming virtual. And I hate to lob the word metaverse, but I am curious where you sit in the metaverse kind of question. If you're excited about it, I know there's a sort of low res pixelated metaverse kingdom DeFi thing that you have sort of mooted. It's out there somewhere. But yeah, what's your take on the metaverse?
I mean, look, I love games. So whenever, back a few years when I actually still had free time, I would just be playing games. So, but that's because I enjoyed that escapism more than reality. Now, where most of my work is digital, it's actually escaping into the real world that I enjoy. Like now, being able to actually go outside for a walk is phenomenal to me because that's a rare occurrence. So I'm a little bit in a weird position asking that question directly because like I'm torn between hell yes, give me my Sword Art Online style headset that I can just jump into this world and like just attach the IV. You don't even have to like wake me up. Just I'm done. Versus, I don't know what I'm trying to think that there was a movie that encapsulated that quite
there's a basic truth to this, which is human beings work in massive swings in one direction, then a counter swing in the other direction. It's classic marketing and trends and everything else. You have a big trend in one direction, you have a big trend in another direction. Back in the 80s, we were obsessed with technology because the real world sucked. And so we were kind of seeing technology as this massive future, amazing thing. Now we are swamped by technology. The real world becomes much more juicy and exciting and interesting if you're prepared to listen to it and accept it. So I find myself completely flipped and reversed. I love technology, but I'm like, I've got 2 young kids. They are not on the iPhone all day. They get like 2 hours of Minecraft at the weekend and then they're done. Like that's it. We go for a walk.
Yeah, I remember the movie. It was Ready Player One, where at the end the dude is like, well, he still prefers the real world because it's the only place you can get a good meal. Simplistic little line, but like there are things that you can still only get in the real world. And I mean, the resolution and the sound and all of that stuff is better as well. So, that you have to appreciate. But as with anything, I've always been a stronger believer in augmented reality than virtual reality. If you start telling me we're looking at a more augmented world and a less metaverse world, I'll get a lot more excited, because I spent hours playing Pokemon Go. I was cycling everywhere I could, trying to just catch whatever Pokemon would pop up. And that is probably still some of the most fun I've had. And, that was the correct mixture of my digital obsession, but forcing me to do so in a virtual world. So personally speaking, if I got to choose, I prefer more of that. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely not an area I really have my hand in. I'm just a spectator as far as it comes to those things. Those I leave to different minds than my own.
Well, it's funny because there are renowned scientists who've spent time looking at remote Amazonian pygmy tribes whose society is built not on work but on play, and they're happy as Larry. I mean, it's not perfect, but they are content, and wealth is equally distributed. And so you have societies built ludically rather than through the endeavor of hard graft and capitalism. And it's funny how I feel like a lot of what we do is kind of not being reduced to, but being kind of directed towards gameplay and gamification, all these kind of things. And that's another one of these ridiculous buzzwords. But the thing that I find most fun about DeFi is that it just feels like a game. It is. and that's why I enjoy it so much. It's just like, well, you know, I mean, if it's a game, it means you can win. So I'm happy to put the time in to try and win the game from time to time. And I think that's definitely has potential positive pushback for greater society. But again, I don't know. We're in a big experiment, so I guess we'll figure it out.
Yeah, but I don't know. Sorry to hammer on one of my previous points, but the only thing I heard in your pygmy example was, they again had abundance theory. There's no reason to compete, so they can just have fun. However, capitalist society is wired for, my mentality for I need to take care of me and mine first, and that's the thing that doesn't allow us to have fun. That's what's preventing us.
No, I think you're absolutely right. Listen, I want to go back to Fantom because you've been in that ecosystem.
We're going back. I don't think we've been there.
Well, I sort of vaguely touched on it, but yeah, I think Fantom stands out because people know you on your LinkedIn page. It says you're an Ethereum developer, and it says, oh, it's so good. Your about page. I'm a lab accident away from becoming a supervillain. The lab accident really needs to show up sometime soon now.
Yeah, I'm still waiting.
Be careful what you wish for. That radioactive spider is coming. So you call yourself a DeFi architect on Ethereum freelance, but Fantom seems to be your happy place. What is it about Fantom that kind of gets you out of bed in the morning?
Oh, that's a good question. Like it's a child you raised. It's even years later, you still look fondly at it. So when I originally got involved, and I've done a few talks about this, is there was nothing. They had accidentally fallen into the ICO hype. They had successfully raised, and now they were in a position where they didn't actually know what they were building, and they didn't actually know how to build it. And that was just towards the end of my review career, where I was like kind of tired of looking at other people's code and wanted to start writing my own. And I was also just exhausted from like project fatigue or whatever you want to call it. So the timing just accidentally worked out, where they needed someone to now actually, figure out to build something. And I was finally felt equipped enough and capable enough to build something. So we spent, days, weeks, months working together in a small little lab on a whiteboard, trying to come up with how do we actually make this asynchronous consensus engine work, and how can we actually incorporate these components. And eventually it came together. That was probably over a year's time. And then after it made theoretical sense, we started digging into the tech itself, and that had a bunch of different challenges, but that was also fun. And there was still something, surreal about like when that all came together, and like we just booted up the network and it worked, like almost surprisingly, you've tested it, theoretically it's going to work, but actually seeing it work, there's a little bit of magic to it. And I mean, that obviously is a big tie-in for me, why I'm still very emotionally attached to the Fantom blockchain as well. But also speaking as a, like one of the things I tried to do even back then when we were architecturing it is I tried to do a lot of builder-focused things. Like I had always planned to now build on top of it in the future. How do I make it good for me to build? So one of the first things they wanted to do is they wanted to build their own virtual machine. That's the first thing I said, hell no, we're sticking with the EVM. Like the EVM is too elegant not to use. There's optimizations we can do in it, but we're sticking with that. And that was a builder's choice, Option number two was the way that after it reaches consensus and finality and it outputs a block, that all happens in synchronous communication versus on blockchains, it's all asynchronous communication. So the difference is when you submit a TX on a website and it has a little loading bar, it's not actually sitting there in the background kind of hoping some miner is going to complete it. Like by the time the RPC node that receives that message tells it I've received it, it's finalized. So it has such a smoother UX. And I mean, finality is something we don't really talk about in blockchain a lot because it doesn't really, impact the everyday user. But Bitcoin, Ethereum, proof of work networks, they don't have finality. If tomorrow, by some miracle, let's go with the hypothetical where an AI is invented and that AI like cracks ECDSA or something, and it figures out how to create a new longest chain, and then all of the Bitcoin ever mined is just assigned to it, then the whole blockchain is going to be reordered. Like there is no finality there. It's not a realistic risk, but it's a theoretical risk. But in systems like Fantom, there's true finality. By the time the transaction is part of the blockchain, it's final. There's nothing you can do about it.
And it's fast. And it's really fast.
I mean, so it can actually get faster. Like that's why I'm really excited to actually. So right at the start, there was a little bit of a difference in opinion in terms of, go slow and be okay. Let me backtrack. So validators, right? Validators is basically how decentralized the network are. Now, most networks, as you add validators, if it's a synchronous network with some synchronous consensus mechanism, as you add validators, it's going to get slower. So something like proof of authority or not really proof of work, because that's a puzzle that's being solved, so anyone can solve it. Proof of stake, where it's everyone together has to vote and agree on the vote, or even something like PLS or ring signatures. Any of these things, the more nodes you add to the network, the slower it's going to become. So on the flip side to that, the Fantom network actually becomes faster the more nodes that can propagate messages to each other, because everything's about that message relay system. So the faster messages can be communicated in the network, the faster it gets. So I, from day one, just wanted us to have no cap, go nuts. Anyone can stake, anyone can validate. Let's go for 10,000 validators from day one. And I actually had proof of concept for validators running on a phone, because it's light overhead. It doesn't need a lot to validate. It just needs to receive a message and then agree that it saw the message. It's that much.
I'm sorry. Hang on. Wait. You had a proof of concept for a node running on a phone.
Yeah, we still have it. It's still in the repo. Well, so now remember, Fantom consensus, all it needs to do is it needs to receive a message and then receive data about who else received that message. And once it did that and it communicated that, then it can reach consensus. So, and because it has finality, it doesn't actually have to keep historic data. So there's nothing locally that needs to be stored other than the current messages in the mempool. And that's all it needs. It needs that graph of current messages, and it needs the graph of who am I communicating with and what knowledge do they have. And once you have that, you can reach consensus. So the consensus itself is a really lightweight system, which is why I want to expand it as quickly as possible. Now, I don't mind the foundation's decision at the time, because the reason they went for a high stake requirement is they wanted to have a bit of a personal relationship with their validators, which, great at the start of a network, because that's when you're at your most vulnerable. That's the time when if something goes wrong, you need to be able to hop into a group chat and be like, hey guys, critical, please update now. And that's had to be used in the past, and it's a lot easier when you have 50 validators or even 10 validators than when you have 10,000 validators across the world, different time zones, things like that. But we're getting there. We're slowly reducing the stake requirement and the overhead, because I want to see it be as fast as it possibly can. But I also want to get to the point where a lot of the architecture that we currently have is kind of legacy architecture from traditional blockchain. So, we keep all the transactions that has ever happened, even though that's not required. I mean, the reason you keep that in a traditional blockchain is you have to replay the whole thing for the longest chain rule. In a finality-based system, you don't. You have to keep the latest root, and then you can just build on top of the root. And when you get to the next root, you can throw away the previous root. So, data we can get rid of. Speed up, we can still do the register changes on the EVM. I think is going to be massive for SS Store, which is going to be a huge gas reduction, which I'm hoping pretty much anyone that's using EVM will migrate to. Well, not migrate; they just have to use it. We've got a new DB integration we're doing now that changes reads on disk from something like 750 megabits per second to 7. It's an insane reduction. So there's so much cool tech stuff that I get excited about. But I mean, the amount of people that actually get excited about this stuff is 5 in our industry of
No, but I disagree because I think there are certain things that we can, through conversations like this, allow people to also become enthusiastic about and excited about. Fast finality, running a node on a phone, that just seems like illegal tech to me. But if you're explaining to people, yes, anyone can run a node, and then they say, what are the node requirements? And then you start talking about AWS, and you start talking about minimum uptime and all these things, and then people go, yeah, that's not for me. But running it on a phone, well, that could be, and that would be really exciting. It would also be sketchy as hell to begin with, but that's fine. That's it's a process we go through. And I really resonate with you because I saw the early days of Harmony's validator network, and I was actually running a validator myself. It sucked so bad, pseudo yum, all that crap. I mean, man, I had no idea what I was doing. Every day I was rebooting my node, and I was such a mess. I think it's such an important part of educating yourself in this space is to go just run a bloody node and see what a pain in the ass it is, and then start getting angry about downtime and all this other stuff. But I think what's interesting is that layer ones had to break through in 2021. Otherwise, there was a real danger they weren't going to make it, because if you couldn't break through in 2021, then you probably weren't worth sticking with anyway. Many did. We saw Avalanche, we saw Solana, we saw Polygon have its moment. I'm pleased to see Harmony's getting a moment. Fantom, I never saw coming. I had no idea. It just wasn't on my radar. And I probably just ignored it because it was a 2018 project, and I just thought all the shiny new things were better. But you reach critical mass as a network, and it feels like Fantom now has. But I guess the question is now, where do you go next? How do you attract more developers to come and build on Fantom?
Well, I don't. I mean, that's not a me problem. So,
but you do. So, that's the thing. You are. I would say you are one of the biggest reasons that people might come and build on Fantom.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense to me. I'm not going to help you build there. So
no, but okay. Listen, there's a brand new shopping mall that's opened up in town, and it's got some weird department store, and it's got a McDonald's. You go there because it's got the McDonald's, and then all the kids hang out, and then the young retail clothing manufacturers realize that there's an audience there. You, my friend, are the McDonald's.
So I believe in retail terms they call that the anchor tenant.
That's the one.
Okay, I can't find fault with your analogy. So yeah, okay, damn, that's good. Well done.
You're tasty, cheap, and bad for cholesterol. So what can I say?
Look, so kind of back to the question. Our original ethos was simple. It was, and that's why I also liked sort of working with Fantom, because even back then everyone hated them and everyone said they were a scam, and they had such a horrible reputation. And I said that, I don't know if you did the Fantom conference the other day as well, that again people like to take out of context, but I keep saying we're a shitcoin. And the reason for that, is I never want anyone in the organization or in the company or in the foundation to sort of let all of the stuff go to their heads, because we have to keep building. That's what got us here, and that's what going to keep getting us here. So our focus, we have a general rule, right? Like when we break a milestone, we don't celebrate it. We're allowed to pause for a second. We're allowed to give ourselves a pat, and then we immediately move on to the next thing we have to be working on. because it's when you stop building that things stop happening. It's when you stop caring about the product and the purity thereof that the bad things happen. So it's difficult for me to be like, yeah, no, come to Fantom, or Fantom's good, or Fantom has adoption, because I don't think any of those things are true. I think the metrics we use today are a percent of the metrics we'll have next year. And, just like they were 1% of the metrics we had last year and 1% of the year before that. So sure, it's nice that we have numbers now, but everything also works in cycles. Everything works in waves. We all know those things are going to retrace, and it's going to go back down on the ladder. And, the same reason we shouldn't be patting ourselves on the back when we're high on that ladder is the same reason we shouldn't be depressed when we're low on the ladder. Because the lower we are on that ladder, the more opportunity there is to go up. Like once you're on top, you have to just try and kind of fight off everyone to stay there, and that's not actually a nice position. So that's why I prefer the we need to prove ourselves against everyone else, and we need to always have that mindset of we don't have the silver spoon. People want to see us fail more than they want us to succeed. And that was the ethos since day one, and that's the ethos still today, and that'll be the ethos in a few years from now, because the core rules remain: keep building, don't pat yourself on the back, and just stay here. Like I know that last one seems a little bit silly, but like one of the most important things in crypto is to just be in crypto. Like just fight to survive and to have your seat. It doesn't matter if that seat is, a $1 market cap coin, or 10 billion. Like these numbers, they change. They're cyclic. Adoption numbers, usage numbers, active users, any metric, TVL, doesn't matter what you want. They're going to change. They're going to cycle. They're going to go up. They're going to go down. Just like the thing people care about most, price. But none of those things affect what we do when we wake up in the morning. Because our job today, the things we're working on, is still the same roadmap we set out, a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And we know where we want to get to. And the rest of the stuff, it's cool, but it doesn't change what we do.
So that brings us finally to V33. What should I call it? Should I call it solidly? Solidly. So we'll call it solidly. Goodness me. Can you explain what it actually is? Just in the simplest layman's terms you can muster.
Uniswap plus Curve with VE. Yeah.
Uniswap plus Curve with VE. So Vote escrow on top of Uniswap, but it's got NFTs in it, hasn't it? It's got NFTs.
That's a technology term. Like I'm a little bit angry that sort of I don't want to call it the artistic community, but the sort of more I don't know, creative side of sort of co-opted NFTs as almost a nomenclature for like a painting, when NFT is just the technology. That's just a non-fungible object. Maybe I should start calling them NFOs. Maybe that'll be better, non-fungible objects. But the only thing is a curve, a VE curve position. One of the big problems there is you're locked into a wallet. So that has security risk, that has inheritance risks. There's a bunch of problems that can come with that if you need to migrate it, or a compromised wallet, or any other stuff. And number two, now in a case of absolute emergency, you need to have access to some capital, because you literally have to pay to keep the lights on. There's nothing you can do about that position because it's locked in your wallet. You can try and sell the wallet, but that's selling your private key to someone else, which isn't going to go well. So the NFT thing is really just taking that VE position and just tokenizing it so that there's access to capital if it's ever required. It can be moved between wallets. But other than that, the same rules apply. It doesn't magically become art. It's not going to have a funky graphic. There's not you can't use it as a profile picture. I mean, I guess you can. It'll be weird, but sure. But that's just the technology. There's just a lot of, and that's why I hate when people ask me kind of for the elevator pitch on Solidly, because a lot of the enhancements is technical. It's not user facing, it's protocol facing. Like, it's designed for a protocol to be able to extract fees. Because for example, one thing that always annoyed me with something like Curve or Uniswap, let's say I want to incentivize a pool. I'm giving my token of my project for people to provide liquidity for that pool, but all of the fees go to someone else. So, like at minimum, if I could get some of those fees, that'll be cool. And that was useful for me. So, that's something that I've needed in the past as a protocol, so other protocols need it. Something else is the on-chain oracles. There's a demand for stuff like that. And if you're a new coin, you can't often, get like a proper Chainlink or a banned oracle or any of these things. So you need something easy to use on chain. But now at the same time, you don't necessarily just want a static price. You actually want to see what's the slippage impact, because that protects you against like big trades that use a static price. So like those code changes are included to make that more optimized for the user. The reward structure, traditionally staking rewards, is one token, one LP position, and that's it. But like we designed a whole new architecture here that allows you to now have infinite amounts of tokens without that being used to DDoS the contract, while you could still protect your LP position. And like there's so many micro technological improvements here that get me excited. Because at its core, it's the volatile pools are normal Uniswap. The new Curve is really just a stable swap, and the rest is a token that mints emission to incentivize liquidity. But that's not the sales pitch. The sales pitch is to protocols that, hey, now you can earn fees. Now you can dynamically add other projects' rewards that might want to co-incentivize on stuff. You have a stronger voting right. Like another thing, for example, with a lot of emission projects is you never own a percentage. You're always being diluted. So sure, I bought 5%, but by next week I have 4.5%. In this thing, you're constantly you're as long as you're obviously staking in the VE position, that proportionately stays the same. If bad things happen and you need liquidity against that position, you can sell the NFT. So it's a lot of
practical,
almost, yeah, and I want to say almost UX improvements. It's just to make the lives easier of everyone interacting with this protocol. But as with anything I build stuff to build on top of this. Like these oracles facilitate the new options platform we want to build. These stable pools facilitate something like multi-chain to have easier liquidity in all of its different chain environments. These emission systems allow me, if I can hopefully like accumulate some through LP positions, to have like incentives on things like fixed forex. I've come to a position where I get so frustrated with some of the protocols because they don't build for builders, they build for users, that I'm just going to build those protocols myself now because I need them to build on top of.
Well, yeah, you are a builder, and that's what I said. When people want to come and build on the chain that you're building on, it's because of this mentality and this attitude. Last question for you: what did you make of VeDAO? Are you going to plead the fifth? Are you allowed to talk about it? Because the way that came about and the way that it's, it went after one of your spots was sort of breathtaking in a weird way.
So
you can plead the fifth. You're allowed.
No. I like it's an unwilling fifth, because the problem is I'm just focusing on getting Solidly out. I'm coding 12 hours a day. Like I wake up, I get to my laptop, I code until I'm exhausted and I go sleep. Like I missed all of the fun. I didn't see these DAOs. I didn't participate them. I have so many things I'm actually angry about. Like one of the other things is I really want solidly emission to and the curve to help the fixed forex products, between different forex assets. And like, I forgot to bridge fixed forex over from Ethereum to Fantom before I launched the solidly thing, because otherwise I could have built TVL. So like, there's so many practical environment things that I'm completely oblivious to when I'm coding, because that gets all of my energy that I don't know. Like, I actually don't know who they are, what their objective is. I don't know what they're going to do now. All I know is one of their dudes messaged me on Telegram the one day and like asked me if I can help them with some stuff. I told them I'm a little bit busy with trying to ship. And then later I found out that's one of the developers, and I asked them for the address they want to receive the NFT in, and that's been the interaction. So I think most people probably know more about what's going on in this whole, whatever you want to call it, than I do at this point.
It's just funny how the whole thing springs up around you. You leave this wake, and then everyone tries to kind of surf that wake, and some do and some don't, and some others do and some others don't. But I hope for everyone's sake that you don't just rage quit for good and leave us, because it's always such good fun. I hope you don't mind me saying that, but you keep it fun for me. I'm like, what's Andre up to? Oh, classic Andre. And then we write a rap song about you, and then it's like, well, tell me, Andre, what's the deal? You keep it entertaining for me anyway.
I always have to add the disclaimer that that's not my goal, but I am still very happy to hear that if there is entertainment to be had.
100%. Well, listen, we've taken up an hour of your time. We've taken you from 12-hour day coding to an 11-hour day coding, and I'll bill you later for that. It's an hour of conversation that you wouldn't have had. Good for the soul. But listen, Andre, thanks so much for taking the time. Do you have one last message for our audience out there, or do you just want to leave it there and go cry?
Yeah, look, I'm launching solidly soon. Just don't ape, please. Like, just have a modicum of caution. Like, there's so much attack vectors on this thing that like I need to still mentally convince myself to actually launch it. So please, just a little bit of restraint.
Test and prod. Tattooed on your forehead daily.
At this point, yeah.
Nice one. Well, listen, thanks so much for taking the time, and I hope to speak to you again very, very soon.
Awesome, man. I enjoyed it. Thank you.
So this is the end of the tale. What happens when protocols fail? To protect retail whales, when hackers derail and prevail, your goods for that don't scale. And I don't want to diss your intellect, but I do think it's time we all reflect that again the Mr. X architects who neglect to get code checked and collect fortune for projects from subjects who lack the selective ability to check the predilection, to take their own direction, chasing their directions, fall on their knees to respect and reflect their anonymous directors. Well, that is the fastest way I know to get wrecked.
So it worked out this time. You got lucky this time, but I will always be an Andre, a white hat to come to save the day. He's the hero we never asked for. We like to worry about McDonalds, but they say, Andre, you say, this is the way.
That's the sound of the SEC inspector. They coming in, they coming through, they coming like corona to disinfect, yeah.
And if the source of information upon which you are relying turns out not to be trustworthy, remember, Defiant.